Actually, I'm happy to be here, and I have to warn you in the beginning, I am not a water expert, but I hope that what I will share around the circular economy solutions and work we're doing, you will find that the foundation or the pillars of the problem and the solutions are very similar. Because it comes back, and I recognize also a lot of the last speaker which were talking. I am from IBM, and you would expect I will talk a lot about technology, but it's not only technology solution, and I fully agree with that. So I will not overwhelm you with all the fancy words about technology on blockchain and artificial intelligence, although it's a very important friend that we have now, which is technology enablement, but it's far from being the only solution. So what is the analogy here with the work we're doing? So what we're doing, we're focusing on the built environment, and I will share a bit more around the work we're doing on the reuse aspect of the built environment. But it comes back to a foundational similar principle. Our economic model is still based on transforming natural capital to other forms of capital, to financial capital. And we are now realizing actually it's simply not sustainable. It's creating a risk, it's creating a cost, a big cost and a big risk on our economy. So actually, we are realizing that the economic model is under threat because we cannot simply sustain in terms of natural capital. And here I'm talking about materials which we use. Could be limestone going to become concrete, or iron ore becoming steel, becoming a product that we use in a car, or a product that we use or module we use in the built environment. Water is another natural capital element, which is foundational to many of our cities, the social, but also industrial applications. And this is where the analogy would come in. And if you think about it, that waste is, and you maybe heard that expression, that waste is simply a material without information or without an identity. When we don't know what's in our buildings, what we don't know what's in our products in terms of materials, components, products, and what's their state, what's their condition, and match them to a demand, then we cannot expect a circular economy. So we started this at IBM, and at IBM we have been since about 10 years working on the topic, about 30 years, our own mainframes and hardware. We have a remanufacturing, refurbishment, reuse unit, and it's a 2 billion business per year with a very healthy profit margin. This is also a good example where circular economy is the foundational starting point is not about sustainability, it just makes business sense. So we can introduce our own components in our own supply chain. So we looked at another industry, which is the built environment. And the built environment, what are the macro drivers? And let's not spend lots of time on the why and why we should act, because I think everybody is realizing now. But fundamentally, about half of materials in the world are in the built environment, are in construction, with about 50% to 2/3 being downcycled or going to waste. And actually couple that with the over depletion of our natural capital in terms of overusing our forests and other forms of natural capital, or polluting them like what's happening in oceans and plastics. And add to that the huge urbanization that we are all seeing, which means we're just going to build more with the design of our buildings which are not made for repurposing. So where do we end up? I just read also, to put the analogy on the macro driver, I just read this statistic which was very powerful as well around water, that by 2025 we will have about 2 billion people living under areas under severe water scarcity. So you can add other forms of natural capital to this picture and you see that you have a problem. It's simply not sustainable. So fundamentally, we have billions of value being lost, and the fundamental root cause is that there is no connection between supply and demand. And there's lack of information about what's in our buildings. We simply don't know what kind of material, the information, the moment you deliver that building, the curve of the information around the buildings and its content start going down. Yes, we do some kind of usage information, but actually we see that many of the buildings which are even 6 years or older, many of this data is missing. So how can we create, and this is basically the foundational starting point, can we come to a world where our buildings become the inventory of materials and products and components that we can re-enter the supply chain and we can create a new supply chain? So essentially, your building or your city becoming a huge warehouse of material or bank of material or bank of products. And it sounds actually fancy, and it sounds also interesting to create a marketplace, and this is the initiative that we are doing actually. We are aiming to create a professional marketplace for the built environment. But you have to step back, because to be able to reach that status, you need to be able to digitize and understand what is in our building. So there are key value creation points in the building, in the products, in the material that you need to capture and digitize, and then you can match supply and demand. Now the building actually has different inputs, and you can argue that, and also water is one of them. We didn't start with water, but you can actually very easily see that the footprint of water is something you can definitely manage and capture and start understanding what is coming out and what's coming in and what's coming out. And can I match in a cascaded way, in a cascaded value way, the usage of this water depending on the quality, depending on the volume, depending on the location? Can I match it to the appropriate demand in a city or in a farm, etc.? So actually, this is a simple analogy to shift, and how can we really break that linear chain, if you want, and move to a more circular chain. And you see, we all know the linear world we're living in, where we mine materials, we mine materials, we assemble product, we build buildings, and using water in between. And we thought that fundamentally we can start breaking that cycle by capturing the relevant information about that building, and what we call the circle of digital twin. And we have defined what we mean by relevant information being a whole selection of areas, from the identity of products to the how is it connected, is it bolted, is it glued, the deconstruction effort, to the condition of the maintenance, because all of this information will help reintroduce it into the market. But actually, you can also generate other types of insights in terms of carbon footprint insights of this building, water footprint of this building, all types of insights that are relevant for municipalities, but also for insurance companies, for building owners. And I will say a few words about that for the orchestration of the whole ecosystem. And actually, the building becomes a supply source, a potential supply source, where urban miners or demolition companies, now we see in the Netherlands the term urban miner becoming more popular, where you have companies harvesting products and components and then actually reintroducing it into supply chain, ultimately having the trade. You see that trust is a foundational condition here, because you need to be able to trust in a professional environment. It's not like eBay. If you buy from consumer to consumer, the impact is not that big. Here you have to be able to create that trust. And in terms of any natural capital exchange in the future, if you want to make it mainstream, including water, after a second use or a third use, you need to be able to establish that trust. And here's where some technologies could be helpful as well, like blockchain. I think one of our next guests will be talking more about that. We are also doing a use case around blockchain, but again, the foundation for us, the key obstacle to overcome was capturing the right data first, the relevant data. And how do you collect it? So one example I can give you, we're using also machine learning and visual recognition when you take photos, but also hyper-imaging technologies to recognize materials, because often if you want to really inventorize what's in your building, you need to be able to tell what kind of material. Is there any toxic stuff like asbest behind this wall? If you want to start reintroducing these products and materials, you need to be able to know more about the identity. So interesting enough, this project started, we did a year and a half ago, we started with the Royal BAM, the largest construction company in the Netherlands, a proof of concept for building the marketplace platform. But we quickly realized actually more additional industry players came on board, and real estate developers were interested, or large pension funds which own lots of buildings, because we are arguing, once you know more about the building inventory, what's in the building in terms of products, components, materials, but also toxic stuff in the building, you actually enhance and increase the valuation of these buildings. And we're working with a financial valuation company to also make these proofs more established with the industry experts. Imagine what would it mean to owners of buildings in terms of valuation of their buildings, but also insurance companies saw potential marketplace. So you see new business model about urban miners. They have more access to what's out there. When do you expect this building to be renovated in 5 months from now? You can expect what kind of stuff will come out. Now I'm sharing this aspect with you to tell that it's not only about technology. You have to also be able to articulate the value proposition to a demolition company, to a building owner, to a construction contractor who will buy cheaper but high quality stuff on such a platform, to a real estate developer, to be all of them to be using that platform and be part of that ecosystem. And water is just another important natural capital feeding in and out. In terms of usage, we all use water inside buildings. In terms of construction, how can you articulate that such kind of marketplace venues and exchange venues will help reduce water footprint, but also will help create new value propositions for whoever is in need of water in the right place, in the right time, with the right quality and the right application. So I think this is the foundational message which is to be shared today.
Muchas gracias, señor Oseyran.